The other one you mentioned earlier, how do you get clients, right? There's not actually a perfect answer to that. I
Yeah.
think I have a different way of getting clients than you probably do. I think what you need to figure out is you need to figure out what is your funnel. I think for me, it's a lot of outward creation. For me,
Hmm.
it's the blog posts. I write a lot about things I'm curious about, and then it kind of hits people who are searching that, and then they come to me.
Hmm.
That's like 3 years in. I think in the first year it was more outbound, basically cold emails to connections and friends saying, "Hey, I'm a consultant now. I don't know what I'm doing. Want to chat about it?"
Yeah.
Um, what's your current funnel? I mean, yours is probably kind of an autopilot now, but what is your funnel? What are some of the other examples you've seen?
Yeah. Well, I'll talk a little bit mine, but also kind of share my perspective on if I were starting out, if I'm a listener of yours, setting up a practice. And I'll give a mention here for the book of David A. Fields, The Irresistible Consultant's Guide to Winning Clients, 6 Steps to Financial Freedom. I've given out a couple hundred copies of this book. I really recommend it. It's the best thing that I have read that it's actually kind of funny. He has a lot of good cartoons that he drew in there, easy to read, and that kind of. So some of what I'll say will be drawn from that. So in terms of what I recommend to freelancers starting out is the people that are most likely to hire you initially are the people that already know you
Right.
and like you and trust you, right? So there's a little mnemonic to getting a lead uh, that I came up with called Clark, CLARC. So if you're going to get a lead, you need to satisfy those. And that's C is contactable, a little bit of a workaround, but people have to be able to contact you. So that means update your LinkedIn profile with your current email and contact info, right? Update all your alumni websites for college, business school, your consulting firm with your current contact info. When you send emails, include a signature. I mean, I've had so many cases where I wanted to call up a consultant for a project and I couldn't find their phone number and it was so time pressed I couldn't email them. So I called someone else. Include your phone number, put your phone number on LinkedIn, make yourself contactable. And then there's L is likable. I mean, likable enough. At least I don't know how likable I am, but at least likable enough. And then A is available. People need to know that you're available for projects, not necessarily like I'm available this week or I'm staffed this week, but available in general for independent consulting projects. So that's the trickiest one. You need to, number one, update LinkedIn and make it look like you're not currently employed full time somewhere, but that you're now an independent consultant or that you're running your own firm. And then you need to tell people that. And I think that some people try this approach of just blasting out an email. Hey, I'm now an independent consultant. You got any projects for me? And that just rubs people the wrong way. And you don't want to call people up and tell them, hey, I'm an independent. You got any projects or do you know someone? It really kind of kills a relationship in some way because you can kind of ask that once. People are put on the spot and then they say no and then they don't really want to talk to you again. So the way I suggest on that is reach out to people and say, hey, I'd love to catch up and hear what's new with you. And they're going to tell you what's new with them. And then obviously they're going to ask, well, what's new with you, Will? Or and you're going to say, oh, well, I've started my new consulting practice. I'm really excited about it. I'm serving XYZ segment. And then just turn it back to what they're doing, right? So you don't want to dwell on it, but you plant that seed. And so you've let them know that you're available. And either if they have a need 6 months from now, or they know someone 6 months from now, they may remember you've planted that seed. And then R is reliable and C is credible. So you need to be reliable and credible. But in terms of getting new clients, you want to assess your core network and just look at every single person that you know. David Fields in the book has a good exercise on this, and then rank them by, are they a decision maker, an influencer, or kind of the remainder, everybody else? And is a really close relationship? Is it a weak tie, or is it just a distant tie? And then take those decision makers and influencers and the strong ties and the weak ties and do these outbound calls. Calls preferably. Emails are okay, but calls are better. It's a warmer interaction. And your initial client set is 90% going to come from that set of people.
I love that. One thing I did early on was just be very blunt about my vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And I would kind of address the elephant in the room. I would say, hey, I am starting as a freelance consultant, but I am not
Right.
hitting you up for projects.
Right.
Trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm a little nervous about taking this leap, but would love to just catch up and kind of see what you're seeing in the industry. I think it worked for me because I'm kind of wildly curious. I'm
Yeah.
always asking people questions and stuff. But yeah, I think the takeaway is essentially just be honest with people, connect with people in a human way, and you'll be surprised. I think. I mean, my first project was I was seeing a professor um, right after I left my job, and she goes, "Oh, what are you up to?" "Oh, I'm freelancing now. I'm trying to figure it out as I go. It's a fun journey." And she's like, "Oh, work for me." And I'm like, "Okay." And that eventually led into something. But if you're not telling people and you're not available,
Yeah.
like you said, it's you're not going to get anything.
Yeah, and I mean, there's different ways of handling it. I love your vulnerability approach, and people respond well to that. So I think it's fine to be honest if you truly do want feedback on something, like as opposed to asking for a project, saying, "Hey, I'm new to this. You're sort of in my client like target space. Would love to get your reaction to my new website," something like that. That's a way of asking for help. The other thing I'd say is once you've done those calls, then you need to find some way to stay top of mind, and different ways of doing that, but definitely content creation. I think there's two primary ways of staying top of mind. Fundamentally, there's content creation and there's creating social interactions. So content creation, if you are doing a podcast or a blog or YouTube channel or white papers or whatever, then that gives you the right to post regularly on LinkedIn and on Twitter, ideally at least weekly. Hey, I just created this. Here's my latest episode. And if the other way is creating social interactions. So, in our world today, that could be creating some small group webinars. It could be something fun, a Shakespeare play reading, together. Or so in the future when we can get back together, creating in-person events, and then so either creating content or creating those social interactions, and then a newsletter is something that every freelancer should think about doing. Maybe a paid one, like I know some folks are doing on Substack, but at least doing some kind of newsletter where you can ask people, "Hey, do you mind if I send you my newsletter?" You don't have to write fresh content for the whole thing. Simply curating content, like whatever industry you're focused on. Dog food industry, great. Here's the latest developments in the dog food industry this week that I thought were interesting, and sending that out to your followers. Even if they're not opening every newsletter, it just reminds them that you exist and reminds them of your focus every week.